Welcome to this explainer. Right now, we're right in the middle of a massive, paradigm-shifting transformation involving the most fundamental, life-sustaining resource on Earth. For centuries, we've pretty much treated water as an infinite public good, right? But today, a really grim hydrological reality is forcing a complete rewrite of how the entire world values, manages, and trades what is quickly becoming known as blue gold.
Okay, let's dive into this. $1.1 billion. When I first looked into this topic, this number absolutely stopped me in my tracks. $1.1 billion is the value of water futures contracts that were tied to water prices the moment the country's first water market launched on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Just sit with that for a second. We aren't talking about trading tech stocks or precious metals here. This is water.
The shocking new reality is that Wall Street is actively trading water futures. You've got farmers, hedge funds, and municipalities utilizing formal financial markets to hedge their bets on the future price and the availability of water in the American West. Driven by worsening heat, more frequent droughts, and overall climate change, water scarcity has literally pushed financial institutions to treat our most vital necessity as a tradable commodity, locking in prices today to protect against the shortages of tomorrow.
Section 1. The Global Water Bankruptcy. To understand why investors are suddenly treating water as a financial asset, we need to transition away from the trading floors for a moment and look at the physical, hydrological reality driving this shift.
It's truly wild when you realize the sheer scale of where our water actually goes. A massive 70% of all global freshwater withdrawals are drained by agriculture alone. The remaining 30%, well, that has to cover industry, municipal use, and literally everything else. As global populations explode and our diets shift toward much more water-intensive foods, it creates severe friction. Add in climate change completely disrupting our historical rainfall patterns, and maintaining that massive 70% slice of the pie becomes incredibly difficult.
And the data backing this up is undeniable. According to the World Health Organization, 2.2 billion people currently lack access to safely managed drinking water. And if you think this is just a crisis for developing nations, think again. The UK's Environment Agency is warning that parts of England, specifically the south and east, face severe water deficits by the 2050s, and their aquifers are already under chronic stress. Reservoirs that reliably refilled every winter are struggling. Droughts that we used to call once in a generation are now hitting us every few years. This crisis isn't in some distant future. It's arriving right on schedule.
In fact, the United Nations University introduced a formal term for this, and honestly, it's chilling. They call it water bankruptcy. This isn't just a temporary shock or a bad dry season. Water bankruptcy is a post-crisis condition. It means that river basins and aquifers have been subjected to such chronic overshoot that they're fundamentally losing the ability to ever return to their normal historical levels. We are, quite literally, living way beyond our hydrological means.
To survive this, the UN is proposing a fundamental shift away from just reacting to emergencies and moving toward what they call bankruptcy management. This requires 3 urgent steps. First up, transparent water accounting, so we actually know what we have in the bank, so to speak. Second, strict, enforceable limits on usage. And third, aggressively protecting our water-producing natural capital, the aquifers, the wetlands, and the rivers that actually store this resource. We absolutely have to act before this stress hardens into irreversible loss.
Section 2, Valuing Blue Gold. So how on earth do we fund this massive transition? Managing this bankruptcy is going to require trillions of dollars in global infrastructure investment by the year 2050.
Well, one of the primary mechanisms emerging is the water rights market. These are systems where legal entitlements to use a specific volume of water from a source, like a river or an underground aquifer, are bought and sold as actual commodities. Now, formalized trading markets have existed for years in places like Australia, Chile, and the Western US. But what we're seeing right now is a rapid acceleration. Institutional investors, sovereign wealth funds, pension managers, they are increasingly entering these markets to allocate resources where they're needed most, and of course, where they command the highest price. But it's not just financial engineering. Actual physical engineering is seeing a massive influx of capital too. Venture capital is rushing in to fund brilliant technology startups aimed at solving this crisis. We're seeing atmospheric water generation that literally pulls moisture straight from the air. Israeli and Singaporean firms are driving advanced reverse osmosis desalination, making it cheaper and way more energy efficient. And critically, we are seeing smart monitoring, leak detection, and AI-driven optimization. This last one is absolutely essential in places like the UK, where networks currently lose a staggering 3 billion liters of treated water to pipe leakage every single day. The tech is there, and the capital is finally aligning to scale it.
Section 3, is water the new oil? With all this money and new tech flowing into the sector, you hear this comparison constantly regarding our geopolitical future. But we really need to look closely at how these two resources actually differ.
It turns out that whole water is the new oil analogy is actually pretty imperfect. Research from Cambridge Core points out the contrasting anatomies of these resources. Think about it. Oil is extracted, burned once, and monopolized by a few global powers, which historically makes it a major driver of international, interstate wars. Water, on the other hand, is managed. It circulates, it renews, and crucially, it is highly localized. Because water is incredibly heavy and super expensive to transport across continents, shortages are way more likely to trigger localized violence, internal displacement, and regional instability rather than massive global wars.
However, even if water isn't exactly oil, the leverage it provides is incredibly similar. Nations that are investing heavily and early in water infrastructure, specifically things like desalination and advanced water recycling, are successfully insulating themselves from climate shocks. Countries like Israel and Saudi Arabia are great examples here. By securing their own independent water supplies, they don't have to rely on trading markets that they can't control, and that grants them immense geopolitical and economic power for the decades ahead.
Section 4. Profiting from human survival. As water becomes a highly valued, traded, and managed asset, we really have to look at the fierce clash between market efficiency and fundamental human rights.
On one side of the debate, you have the financial sector's argument. As this quote from RBC Capital Markets points out, water scarcity and pricing are going to be dominant issues for years to come. The core argument here is that markets, and specifically pricing mechanisms, create essential clarity. When water is completely free or heavily subsidized, it just naturally encourages waste. By assigning it a true economic value, you create efficiency, you incentivize massive technological investment, and you force conservation across heavily consumptive industries like agriculture.
But we have to immediately juxtapose that with the climate justice perspective. Here, a representative from the Institute for Policy Studies describes water futures as a cynical attempt at setting up what's almost like a betting casino. For many people, the very idea of treating a basic, life-or-death human necessity as a tradable financial asset is just horrifying. The big concern is that privatization and market forces will inevitably favor wealthy corporations and large-scale agribusinesses over vulnerable communities, low-income populations, and everyday local farmers. And when we look at how this plays out in the real world, the results are, honestly, vastly uneven. Nations with really strong governance, places like Singapore, Denmark, and Germany, have leveraged public-private partnerships with incredible efficiency. But compare that to struggling systems across sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America, where infrastructure deficits are only deepening. And it's not just developing nations. Even in wealthy countries, the model can totally fracture. Look at the UK's privatized water sector, highlighted by the recent near collapse of Thames Water, all the ongoing issues with sewage discharge, and the regulator Ofwat having to approve significant bill increases just to fix aging pipes. It is a constant, ongoing struggle to balance profit, public good, and capital investment.
Which leaves us with this final, profound thought to consider. We are officially living in an era of water bankruptcy. The technology to save our systems already exists, and the financial markets are wide awake to the reality of blue gold. But as we look at the billions of dollars trading hands on Wall Street and the aging pipes beneath our own cities, we have to ask the ultimate question posed by today's sources. Will the capital and the political will arrive before the taps begin to run slow? It's a question that should completely change how you view the water running from your own sink. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.